Sometimes, innovation and agility trump sheer brute force. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, the notion that Ukraine would be able to send the much larger and seemingly more powerful Russian navy packing from the Black Sea might have seemed preposterous. And yet, to a great extent, that's exactly what happened. Almost 4 years into the war, contrary to expectations, the advantage in the Black Sea remains with Ukraine, as it has been since a few weeks into the war. So let's explore how Ukraine has managed to beat back Russia's Black Sea fleet and what it means for the future of naval warfare in general. Ukraine had inherited a small but competent navy when it gained independence after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. However, around 3/4 of that had either been seized or destroyed by Russia during its annexation of Crimea in 2014. The cream of the Ukrainian Navy was stationed at the southern naval base in Donalslav Bay. The bulk of the Russian Black Sea fleet was based around 60 miles away at the nearby Sevastopol naval base, as it had been since its founding in 1783 by Prince Potemkin. The Russians first blockaded the bay on March 3, 2014, by parking the Black Sea fleet's flagship missile cruiser, the Moskva, across its entrance. Then it scuttled the anti-submarine ship Ochakov and the rescue ship Shakti to obstruct the bay's mouth, preventing Ukrainian ships from escaping to the open sea. The 13 Ukrainian ships trapped in the bay had tried to be put to sea when the blockade of the bay started, but were outnumbered and eventually captured by Russia, effectively dismantling the core of Ukraine's naval forces. The siege ended on March 27 with the capture of the last trapped ship, the minesweeper Cherkasy. Ukraine was left with only one operational frigate and a fleet largely consisting of small patrol boats. Its main naval base, repair facilities, and a large portion of its personnel had also been lost. In the ensuing years, the US and its NATO allies began the process of trying to rebuild Ukraine's naval capabilities. The idea was to develop a Mosquito fleet of small, fast vessels geared for coastal defense and interoperability with NATO forces. The plan was more or less on track, with the US donating 2 Island-class patrol boats by 2018, with 2 more and 2 Ada-class corvettes from Turkey on order. Then Russia invaded. At the time, the Black Sea fleet was at least 7.5 times larger than Ukraine's, which had no corvettes, submarines, destroyers, or aircraft carriers. And in the opening weeks of the invasion, the Russians rammed home their advantage. Within the first month of the invasion, at least 27 Ukrainian Navy ships had been captured or destroyed, along with 18 Coast Guard vessels, mostly during the capture of Berdyansk and the siege of Mariupol. The Ukrainians were forced to scuttle their flagship, the F-130 Hetman Sahai-Dachny Krivak III class frigate in Mykolaiv, to prevent its capture by the Russian Navy. But then the tide started turning in Ukraine's favor. That was confirmed on April 14, 2022, when the aforementioned flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva, went up in flames after being hit by Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles. A major fire broke out on board after onboard munitions exploded, and the ship sank while being towed to port in Sevastopol. 2 weeks later, Ukrainian forces attacked 4 Raptor-class patrol boats with Bayraktar TB2 drones near Snake Island, destroying 3 and severely damaging the 4th. Bayraktar TB2 drones then took out a landing vessel in the same vicinity in the following days. In June 2022, Ukraine hit and sank rescue tug Vasily Beck, reportedly by hitting it directly with 2 Harpoon missiles. In October, Ukraine delivered a blow that set the standard for what was to follow. On October 29, Ukraine launched its first major raid on Sevastopol with a combination of both air and naval drones. Although no significant damage was done to the Black Sea Fleet in this particular attack, the Ukrainian drones hit and damaged the Natia-class minesweeper Ivan Golubyets and the Admiral Makarov frigate. The tone was set. Ukraine was no longer limited to hitting Russian ships, whether at sea or docked in Crimea. With missiles and drones launched from Ukrainian land, it can now also strike with naval drones. It's a development that changed the dynamics in the Black Sea, and, as we shall see, the dynamics of naval warfare in general. Ukraine has turned to drones and asymmetrical warfare as an overarching strategy, as a way of countering Russia's superior numbers and firepower. But nowhere has this strategy been more effective than in the Black Sea. Well before the invasion began, Ukraine had recognized that achieving military parity with Russia would be impossible. As a result, the Navy had to be built according to an asymmetric principle, according to Serhiy Kuzan, chairman of the Ukrainian Security and Cooperation Center and former advisor to the Ministry of Defense. In practice, that meant substituting the warships, submarines and aircraft carriers that it lacked with drones. By 2023, the Ukrainian Navy had reconfigured itself into an agile, asymmetrically oriented force. The fleet is based on small patrol craft and rigid inflatable boats, or RIBs, backed by an ever-expanding range of naval drones, air drones and anti-ship missiles. During 2023, the impact of this new fleet grew from strength to strength. On May 24, the Yuri Ivanov-class intelligence ship Ivan Kurs was reportedly damaged by one of 3 Ukrainian sea drones. Then on August 4, near the port of Novorossiysk, the Project 775 Rapucha-class landing ship Elenigorsky Gornyak was seriously damaged by a sea drone and towed to the port by the Russian Navy. Following the attack, the Ukrainian Navy reported Russian ships leaving port in a hurry and dispersing in the Black Sea. The Ukrainian attacks on the Black Sea fleet weren't just limited to naval drones though. On September 13, Ukraine attacked Sevastopol with Su-24 bombers armed with British-supplied Storm Shadow missiles. The Minsk landing ship and a Project KS-701 Tunets-class patrol boat were hit and destroyed, while the Kilo-class submarine Rostov-on-Don was reportedly damaged beyond economic repair. Another patrol boat, the Project 22160 patrol ship Sergei Kotov, was reportedly damaged by a Ukrainian naval drone attack the following day and eventually sunk by another naval drone in March of the following year. Ukraine also used cruise missiles to attack the Zalif shipbuilding yard in Kerch, Crimea on November 4, damaging and possibly sinking the relatively new Karakut-class corvette Askold, which carried Caliber cruise missiles. A similar attack using air-launched cruise missiles on December 26, Boxing Day, hit the Novichokazk, a major Russian landing ship. Video of the incident showed multiple massive explosions and fires, indicating that munitions, possibly cruise missiles, aboard the ship had been detonated by the attack. Approximately 74 members of its crew were killed and 27 were wounded as a result of the attack. However, heading into 2024, the Ukrainian weapon doing the most damage in the Black Sea continued to be its naval drones, in particular the Magura V5 sea drone. The Magura V5 is a multi-purpose unmanned surface vehicle, or USV, developed by Ukraine at a cost of around $273,000 each. It's capable of performing surveillance, reconnaissance, patrolling, search and rescue, mine countermeasures, maritime security, and of course combat missions. The drone is 18 feet long and weighs around 2,200 pounds, with a payload capacity of up to 705.5 pounds. It's powered by a water jet propulsion system and can achieve a maximum speed of 48 miles per hour, with a cruising speed of 25 miles per hour. Importantly, the Magura V5's operational range extends to around 500 miles, bringing Crimea and a significant chunk of Russia's Black Sea coast into range. The primary armament of the Magura V5 is an explosive charge of up to 705.5 pounds, designed for kamikaze attacks on naval vessels. However, it also has reportedly been modified to carry R-73s. The drone's combat module includes redundant communication systems such as mesh radio with an aerial repeater or satellite communication to ensure jam-resistant connectivity. The Magura V5 is also equipped with advanced navigation systems, including GNSS, inertial and visual guidance, enabling autonomous or remotely controlled operation. It's also stealthy, with low radar and thermal signatures enhanced by a low-profile, V-shaped carbon fiber hull with a waterline height of only 1.6 feet. The drone can transmit up to 3 HD video streams in real time, enhancing situational awareness for operators. It's also capable of operating in swarm formations, with decoy drones used to saturate enemy defenses and increase the success rate of attacks. Thanks to these features, the Magura V5's impact has been devastating. On February 1, 2024, Ukraine released video footage claiming to show the sinking of the Tarantul-class corvette R-334 Ivanovets in the former Ukrainian naval stronghold of Donuslav Bay using Magura V5 USVs. Several weeks later, Ukrainian Magura V5 sea drones sank the Project 775 large landing ship Cesar Kunikov off the coast of Crimea. Then on June 6, Magura V5s were at it again, sinking the Russian tugboat Saturn. Of course, the Russians have tried to take steps to mitigate the threat posed by Ukraine's unexpected naval prowess. Following the October 29, 2022 naval drone attack on Sevastopol, it began seriously beefing up the port's defences. By April 2023, it had put in place 6 layers of physical barriers like nets and booms, in addition to patrol boats, helicopter patrols, anti-diver dolphins, and gun emplacements. However, for the Black Sea Fleet, much of this was to no avail. By April 2024, almost a third of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, 27 of 80 vessels, including a submarine, had been sunk or disabled, prompting the British Defence Ministry to declare the Black Sea Fleet functionally inactive. The sinking of the Moskva was a particularly painful blow. This was only the second time in naval history that a cruiser-class ship was destroyed in combat. The Argentine ARA General Belgrano had previously been sunk by a British submarine during the 1982 Falklands War. The Moskva was the only ship in the fleet equipped with anti-aircraft missile systems capable of defending an entire naval formation from air attack. Its loss rendered the Black Sea Fleet incapable of operating freely in the northwestern part of the Black Sea. More importantly, its sinking forced Russia to scuttle its plans for an amphibious landing near Odessa. That remains the status quo to this day. Faced with an increasing battering by Ukrainian drones and missiles, Russia had already begun withdrawing the Black Sea Fleet by October 2023. On July 15, 2024, the last remaining warship of this once vaunted fleet left its base at Sevastopol. While some vessels were moved to smaller bases or bays in eastern Crimea or along Russia's Black Sea coast, the bulk of the Black Sea Fleet now resides in the port of Novorossiysk, some 186 miles east of Sevastopol on the eastern coast of the Black Sea. Multiple warships, including guided missile frigates, landing ships, patrol ships, and submarines, were forced to turn tail and flee to safer waters. Forced to abandon the base in Sevastopol and seek refuge further east in Novorossiysk, they're rapidly finding that nowhere is safe, wrote Tom Sharp, a former Royal Navy captain, in the London Telegraph. If anything, Russia's humiliation in the Black Sea has only increased in 2025. Since 2023, Ukraine has been engaged in a strategy described as kinetic sanctions. The basic idea is to degrade Russian logistics, stretch its defenses, and target the heart of Russia's wartime economy by disrupting all refining capacity and fuel supplies. Ukraine may not have the manpower and equipment to fend off the Russian invasion indefinitely. Despite optimistic claims to the contrary by the likes of President Donald Trump, there is little evidence to suggest that Ukraine has the military mass needed to expel Russia from the battlefields of eastern Ukraine with pure military might. However, if Ukraine could weaken Russia economically and strategically to the point that continuing the war is no longer feasible, it would be in a much better position to secure a peace agreement at the eventual end of the war in its favor. So, Ukraine has embarked on a campaign to hit Russian oil refineries, energy infrastructure, key military manufacturing facilities, and even air bases deep inside Russia, housing its strategic bomber fleet. Its dominance in the Black Sea has played an increasing role, especially since the Kinetic sanctions campaign has picked up serious momentum during 2025. On January 6, Ukrainian Navy USVs launched FPV drones in Kherson from sea drone carriers in the Black Sea. This appears to have been the first time that air drones were successfully launched from a naval drone, with both being controlled from all the way back on the Ukrainian shoreline. The attack was devastating, taking out 2 Pantsir S-1 anti-aircraft missile and gun systems, 1 OSA AKM air defense system, and 2 S-300 air defense systems, according to Ukraine's military and a war reporter. The attack cost Russia an estimated $350 million, with the Pantsir systems worth around $15 to $20 million each, the OSA system worth around $10 million, and the S-300s a cool $150 million each. A few days earlier, on New Year's Eve, the Ukrainian Navy had scored another first, taking out 2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters and damaging a third with missiles fired from the Magura V-5s, reportedly killing all the crew. The drone first damaged 1 helicopter, and when a second arrived to assist, it too was struck. The event marked the first time aircraft had been taken out by naval drones. Then in May, the Magura made history again, downing a $50 million Russian Su-30 fighter jet with AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles launched from the sea-based drone, an incident which Russia unsurprisingly denies. Striking a fighter jet with a missile launched from a naval drone marked a first. not only for drone warfare, but for air combat history as a whole. Later that same day, Ukrainian forces downed a second Su-30 jet. One crew was lost, while the other managed to eject and evacuate. This is believed to be the first known use of the Magura 7 USV variant. But the innovations of the Ukrainian Navy certainly haven't stopped there. On August 21, Ukraine's military intelligence, the HUR, reported that it struck a Russian patrol boat in the Black Sea near the occupied town of Zalizhny port in Kherson Oblast the day before, killing 5 crew members. The attack was carried out with a USV-launched missile guided by a laser designator operated from a drone. Ukraine's naval drones have also increasingly been getting directly involved in the Kinetic sanctions. On September 24, the HUR struck Russia's oil terminals in Tuapse and Novorossiysk with naval drones, reportedly paralyzing major export operations on the Black Sea coast. The drones targeted key logistics hubs, including Transneft state-controlled oil loading complex and the Caspian Pipeline Consortium terminal in Novorossiysk. These facilities are central pillars of Russia's crude oil exports, including shipments through its so-called shadow fleet. Combined, they have an export capacity of around 2 million barrels of crude per day. Meanwhile, Ukrainian naval innovation continues to flourish, with the unveiling of its latest USV in September. Dubbed Barracuda, this modular craft is built for the treacherous terrain of Ukraine's many rivers and coastal waters, and can be fitted with different weapon systems depending on the mission. Ukraine's 40th Coastal Defense Brigade said the platform carries elements of artificial intelligence, suggesting it could operate with greater autonomy, spotting threats, navigating complex waterways, and easing the workload on human operators. Barracuda is also reported to have remote control features and modernized tracking systems that guarantee reliable movement in any weather, day or night. Unfortunately for Ukraine, Russia is slowly but surely recovering from its humiliation in the Black Sea and has started to come up with innovations of its own to try and wrest the initiative back. In April 2025, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a $100 billion decade-long naval expansion plan, vowing to modernize Russia's fleet in light of the many vulnerabilities in the Russian Navy exposed by Ukraine in the Black Sea. To be sure, the challenge they face is severe. As Kirilo Budanov, Ukraine's defense intelligence chief, put it, "The Black Sea fleet is fully blocked, and that thing that Russians previously joked about, that Ukraine has no fleet and only a few boats, now they're faced with the same thing." Russia has removed most of its fleet from the immediate firing line and significantly bolstered its coastal defenses, despite these being tested regularly by Ukrainian air and sea drones. More pertinently, in no small part fueled by Ukraine's success with naval drones, Russia has begun developing its own. According to Samuel Bendet, an adjunct senior fellow at the Center for a New American Security, Russian developers went back to the drawing board to build their USVs. Of their current designs, at least half a dozen USVs are influenced by Ukraine's own unmanned boats. Over time, Russian plans for USVs such as the Vizier, Murena, Orkan and Bek 1000 have evolved, as the Russian Navy is also contemplating using its USVs as carriers of surveillance and reconnaissance equipment, as well as drones, missiles, rockets and other strike assets to go after Ukrainian USVs and Ukraine's shore-based military assets. And they're starting to make some progress. In August 2025, Russia claimed its first successful USV strike, using a drone boat to sink the Ukrainian reconnaissance ship Simferopol near the Danube River. Moscow is also experimenting with more ambitious platforms, including the Katran, a naval drone carrier designed to launch dozens of FPV kamikaze drones on missions up to 125 miles away. It still has a long way to go to catch up and restore some semblance of control over the Black Sea, but the hard lessons it has had to learn have also made navies around the world stand up and take notice. According to Admiral Sir Ben Key, Britain's former head of the Royal Navy, crewless vessels and automation have delivered a dreadnought moment, an allusion to advances in propulsion, gunnery and armour that led the British and German navies to overhaul their strategies in the early 1900s. "We're once again facing something completely new, a paradigm shift," he said, speaking at the DSEI Arms Show in London in 2023. As per the Admiral, on the one hand, Ukraine's successful attacks show navies what types of offensive capabilities and tactics they should consider for themselves. On the other hand, the success of such attacks means navies need to urgently reconsider their defensive strategies. And he's far from the only naval leader observing with both eyes wide open. China, Iran, and North Korea are all hard at work developing AI-enabled autonomous naval drones inspired by Ukraine. NATO navies are also developing all manner of unmanned naval systems and shoring up their defenses against this new class of threat. Just as Ukraine's use of small, cheap FPV drones to take out Russian armor worth millions has changed the status quo on the ground-based battlefield, its innovations in the field of naval drones threaten to do the same at sea. Imagine a swarm of small but lethal Houthi naval drones terrorizing a mighty US aircraft carrier. It's not as far-fetched as it would have seemed just a few years ago, and the race is on to see who ultimately prevails in this latest technological arms race. Now, if you haven't yet, click that subscribe button and enable notifications so you don't miss out on the latest military news and deep dives from Ukraine and beyond. Thanks for watching.